Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your World Show. I'm your co-host Chris Alba. Larkin will be on with us in a few minutes. She's just finishing up at the barn, but trying to keep us on schedule. So go ahead and get started here with today's topic. And the title is The Transformational Power Within the Present Acceptance of Our Realities. And we talk about this a lot on the show. You know, it's about choices and the choices that we make both create the opportunity to always gain something, whether it was a met expectation or a missed attempt. We can call it a mistake, we can call it a miscommunication, we can call it a misstep. However, you choose to label it is the way that you mentally communicate it. And, you know, the big thing about, you know, the first Hermetic principle that everything is mental is our consciousness, energy itself contains information. And the more information we become aware of, the more we can see the differences and similarities between, which is like a discernment, right? It's not necessarily a judgment because, in my opinion of how I look at judgments, it's creating a fact, whether or not you experienced it or not. And when you go through an experience, you have the opportunity to discern, you know, for yourself, what does this mean for me? How can this, you know, be beneficial for me? How can this help me? You know, what did this teach me? You know, those types of things. And when we live as open mentally as and emotionally as we can, using, you know, principles of like gratitude and acceptance and grace and patience and understanding, you know, these words have meaning both as within our individual but also in our collective, and that's what allows us to communicate with one another at the level of mind. And then we all have this discernment within us, some that we can feel like whether or not the person that's speaking is speaking a level of truth, whether they are just misguiding us or you know, those types of things. And it's been in my experience in life that when we gain these new awarenesses of ourselves, like we're doing all these processes of healing and transformation and self-improvement and all these things, we're constantly building our egoic self, our character, and that is aligning us more towards our soul self, our whole self. It's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It's a polarity of energy, and the more we can observe these two polarities of where we are, where we want to go, where we've been, you know, because where we've been and where we want to go are within the mind, the realm of mind. You know, our body is always rooted in presence, and that's why embodiment practices, you know, breath work and meditation and yoga and being in nature and all these things help us vibrationally, energetically. Hey, Mark, it's great to see you. And you know, we all have these obstacles in our lives that we can turn into opportunities. When we are aware that they are there, we accept radical responsibility, which we've talked a lot about, for what's currently going on and the part that we can play towards a higher solution to, you know, in a moment beyond this one. And the more we can do that openly and honestly and with authenticity, the more we'll live within the integrity, within the vibration of unconditional love. Because no one doesn't we can choose to do something or we can choose not to do something, but there's a reason on both sides of the spectrums. We move towards one that might be a little more pleasurable or one that's a little more challenging. And that has a lot to do with our mindset and our subconscious belief systems that we've been programmed with as children. And then as we start to the awakening process, right? I wish it was like a switch and you were just there, right? But as you go through this refinement process, you become more and more aware, more and more awakened to what's within you. And the more we can live within the acceptance of, we're full spectrum with our emotions. We can be, angry. We can get mad. We can, be sad. We can be happy. Be. These are temporary states where we can identify with a certain frequency that we label something. And when we can just accept that it's there, not try to push it away, not try to justify it, not try to reason or use our intellect to justify it, right? But just accept that it's there. The energy most of the time just moves on its own. And that's the craziest thing. I was talking with somebody yesterday, and we were talking about thought rumination and just having these constant thoughts going on in our heads. And, I said, well, go try to write it down and express it. You can share it with your words. You can share it with me and I can listen, or you can go write it down and get it out of your head. Because it's been expressed, it's been realized in the manifestation, and then you can burn it and let it go. And she came back later and thanked me because that was very helpful for her. And I forget these things sometimes too. It's easier for me sometimes to guide other people when I'm not caught up in it myself. And that's why I think those of us that want to walk as a healer, we choose to really go through the depths of our emotions and of our consciousness and our expressions of how we've gotten to this point, and then how can we harmonize within ourselves and then help others to do the same. That we then create a collective harmonious vibration. A lot of times in my own personal life, especially when there was times that I had something to prove to myself or somebody else, I was quick to make decisions. I was quick to act because I had this false sense of belief or faith, or however you want to define it, that what I was doing was the right thing to do. And it wasn't until later in life when things took a shift, usually beyond my control, that I got the opportunity to sit down and look at, okay, well, how could I have done these things better? How could I be a better version of myself now than I was then? How can I shift my habits? How can I think differently? How can I feel better differently? How can I communicate differently? And opportunities that are going to be coming up, because what has happened, and there's a time and place to journey, in meditation and in, shamanic work and those types of things, to go back in different therapies, to go back to those times that left energetic imprint, whether it was we could call it a memory, whether it's a thought memory or a feeling memory. It's still stuck within our auric field. And when we find acceptance, we can find a level of peace, because we can mine from it the things that added to our life. It's inclusive. It's inclusive. It might seem exclusive sometimes. Like I choose to exclude, people that want to drink every weekend in my life. It's not a hard thing, but I'm not going to be hanging out with people that are drinking all the time, because I don't drink. I don't I don't see the benefits in it for me anymore. I don't see it doesn't help my health. It doesn't help my behavior by any means. It can be fun, but I also found more often than not that fun was destructive or hurtful in some way, and I don't like to be under the influence of spirits, um, whether it's alcohol or in the other realms. When people talk about those things, those demons and things like that, those are levels of consciousness. Those are thought patterns. And when we can sit in acceptance of these things, I believe that we can overcome these challenges. And it's been in my history of my own experience that to be true. And the tricky part is how to communicate it. Because you have to understand that there's an energy greater than my ego, my own self-control will. Because if I'm only able to see what I can see, then I'm only seeing a limited impact of my true cause, of me being who I am and showing up in the world. I was talking to my son about, him drinking these sports drinks. And, I said, dude, one thing, too much isn't a good thing with these things, but also, look at the effect that you're having on the environment with these plastic bottles. And he said, oh, well, I recycle, you recycle these things. And I said, well, yeah, but not everything that we recycle gets recycled. And it's creating, every time we buy something, we create a demand for more to be made. And if these bottles are continuously being made, we're creating more and more waste for our mother nature to have to try to process, which from our understanding of science doesn't happen. It just gets smaller. And now they're talking about, microplastics and things like that in the water supply and how they're having an effect on our aquatic life and things like that. And, while this platform is here for me to kind of share my opinion and views and things like that, I'm not here to tell anyone how to live. I'm here to question how I'm here living, and how can I live in the highest vibration that I can, without affecting the nature beyond me that I sense within my five senses. How can I not cause no harm? And, it's impossible driving a car without causing harm. We squish bugs and, all those kind of things. So there is a level of, well, I have to accept some things, if I choose to travel by airplane, I'm causing certain pollutions and things like that. That's what we've created as a humanity. The question is it a want or is it a need? Do we need to do these things? Do we need to have these experiences? Well, in some teachings, yeah, because that's what we came here to experience life of. And when we can get out of our own comfort zone, our own area code, our own area, we can observe new ways of living and new ways of walking and new teachings and new practices and things like that, which enrich our lives, which enhance our well-being, as long as we continue to practice and integrate these things into our lives, because it's not about just knowing about them. If it was, if there was no effect, which is another, cosmic law of cause and effect. If there was no effect, then the thoughts that we have wouldn't be creating things here in physical reality. It's bridging the different energetic realms, bringing thoughts and imaginations into physical reality, so we can all share that in this thing we call 3D Earth life, which sounds really big and hairy and audacious, but in the simplest terms, we all share the now. And what we're witnessing outside of us through the different media stations and the different influences of the things that we observe on a daily basis, then that's what we become aware of. And if there's things that we can do, usually it's within our reality. We're not going to change the government by just putting a new person into power, because that's not changing the system. That's just changing the person who is getting blamed for everything or gets to take credit for everything. But we as human beings have to change. We have to shift. I've been saying for years, once people will stop fighting for wars that they feel called to fight, that will be the end of wars. That will be the beginning of peace. But until people can justify their physical taking someone else's life, and still feeling like they're walking their religious path of one that has a rule of thou shalt not kill, well then I don't know, because again, that's not for survival, unless you're eating them, I guess, which we've evolved beyond that, I believe, as most humans, but that's about the only time we can justify taking another life, is if we're going to consume it. And if we're consuming that, then that lives on within us, because it helps us extend our life force energy. So to me, it's about the relationship that you have with your food, and the things that you consume. If they're helping you grow into the person you want to be, then awesome. If they're closing you and excluding you from life, well, then maybe you need to be a little more mindful about what you're practicing, but that's your own discernment. I'm not here to judge that for you. Oh, that's okay, Mark. I can't believe that you chose to tune in while you're having treatment. Thanks for checking in, and I hope you're doing well. I always send blessings and prayers to your brother, and your recovering of your health to fullness and oneness, and appreciate the support. So and Mark, you're a living example of today's podcast. How to transform your reality. You're choosing and you're making choices to overcome a challenge that's in your life with your health. And I'm very proud of you and proud to have you in my life, and want to support you in every which way that I can. And I think that's what we're here as humans to do. I know on this process of growth for me in the very beginning. Hi, Christina. Hope all is well with you as well. Every time that I tried to change my life, whether it was change my eating habits, or to drop an addiction, or let go of a job, or any of these other things, to pursue things, those that I thought and know that love me were ultimately not as supportive and encouraging as I hoped. And that created a division within me, because I didn't feel accepted. So I got to learn what it felt like to accept myself, even though I didn't have outside support. And at the same time, that desire for outside validation and support was still there. So when people met me and I started walking this path and helping people heal themselves and enhance their lives, that validation was enough to keep me going through what I've gone through to continue to do this. I'm very grateful, Mark, and look forward to seeing you in September. And that's where we can encourage, right? I understand that this happened to you. Oh my goodness. You want to talk about it? Do you need advice? Are you looking to sit with this, or you're looking to transform it into something else? And everybody has their own timetables. So when we're given advice without asking for permission first, it's been my experience that you can cause more harm than help. And when people need your help, if they know, I mean, I had a friend call me that I haven't talked to in a while and said, I'm going through something and I know you're the person to talk to about this. Wow, thanks for the confirmation. You know, I didn't have to market that. It's just who I embody myself to be. And that's the reputation that you'll end up building. And that's how we grow beyond our past. You know, to admit, hey, yeah, I was a drug dealer. I was a drug addict. I was in the escort business. I was in the adult industry. I was in films. I danced. I did all these crazy things trying to figure out who it was that I was, what I was supposed to do in this life, because I was following the game plans of what everybody else was, and it led me to suicide. Because I didn't have it. And there was no way that I wanted to live in that life, to just grin and bear it through the rest of my life and then hope that I had 10, 20 years after retirement to be able to go live the life that I wanted to live. So I started living the way I wanted to live. And through that process, I've been able to refine it for myself. And then, you know, relationships are, you know, a challenge in themselves, because everybody's in the process of refining themselves, as well as the collective us of what we're doing together, why we're doing it together, what's our vision, what's the reason that we're putting energy into this, why are we committing ourselves to walking through this with one another, you know. And if it's just because I want to be there to love you and support you through thick and thin, because that's what I want in my life, oh my goodness, what a beautiful thing to have in your life. I want to work with you. I want to, you know, create events. I want to do this. I want to do that. This is what we can do together. Awesome. Fantastic. You like nature? I do too. Sweet. Let's go out and go hiking, or let's go kayaking, or let's go have an experience and get to share our conscious awareness with one another as we go through this river of life, of this stream of consciousness, this lifetime, whatever you want to call it. And that's the fun part about this. And that's the challenge of it, is everybody has their own way of communicating. And if we don't know ourselves, it's easy to go, well, what do I have to lose? And when you really know yourself, you can say, well, what do I have to lose? Because I came here to have experiences. So let's try to make this as good as we can. Hi, Bernadette, how are you? And really make it what we can. You know, that's the crazy thing. You know, love is inclusive. It's not exclusive. But what does all of our pop culture and all of our things try to teach us? To be exclusive. You know, like they're going to take from you. They can't take from you. You're an infinite energy. What they can take from you is your awareness, your attention. And if you choose to give it, then you choose to give it. And that's beautiful, in my opinion. If you're willing to help somebody out, even though you're going through a hard time, you're the type of person that I want in my life. If everything's going awesome for you and you're too busy, then I appreciate you and I want you in my life too, but I'm going to learn not to count on you. I'm glad you're doing okay, Bernadette. Yeah, I'm doing pretty awesome. Looking forward to Larkin coming in here, but so she can continue this topic. But we are just rolling with what's current right now. Does anyone have any questions or comments or concerns? Anything they'd like to share about, how, when they found acceptance of what was, they were able to transmute it into what will be through changing the way they think, where they feel, the way they behave on a habitual basis. Silence. Which, they say on a podcast isn't a good thing. But if you do, feel free to put in the comments. I'd love to share it, and we can talk about it. And, because we are examples of our strength and our tenacity and, all these beautiful things because, right, right, Mark, we're to start. You've got some wonderful ones. We could actually do a whole podcast. Yeah. Amy, so when she accepted what is, she didn't fight the resistance anymore. And, I understand that. There's another philosophy out there, just to challenge a little bit, that to actually transmute the things inside of us that we're scared of, the anger, the disappointment, the fears, the insecurities, we have to go towards the discomfort, towards the resistance, because that's source. That's why the resistance there, it's keeping us blocked from source energy, and that's why we notice the resistance. And our ego will be one, even if it's a spiritual ego, because they're all identities. It doesn't matter, just saying your name is an identity. It's an ego. We're in form in this three-dimensional world, and it's okay. I'm not here to bash it. I'm here to harmonize with it, to heal it, because then our true soul self comes through it. And if we're afraid, spirit connection and your own thought process, I probably am not the most qualified to answer this. For me, I knew it was spirit talking to me because it didn't have any reason or justification or story or anything that went along with it. It was just, wait, be still. The answers are coming. They're gonna do this, and then I had to sit and watch for that to happen, to then understand the difference between my thoughts and my intuition or spirit or anything, source, or however, guides, or however you choose to compartmentalize this in your mind. It's come through my, I was climbing the cliff once, and my foothold broke away, and I was dangling from a root a couple 100 feet from the ground. And I only had two options: pull myself up to the top, or drop about 8 feet down onto a ledge and hope I didn't bounce off and fall the rest of the way. And that was those types of times, or when I've heard spirit speak to me the most. And it basically said, do not pull up. The root won't support you. And I didn't challenge it. I just heard it and was like, yep, got ya. And then made my drop. So maybe was my ego trying to save me and sound like my spirit. I don't know, and that's the fun part about this. When you truly awaken, you realize that you don't know anything. We have these observations, we've had these things we've learned, we have knowledge, which always stops in our past. Because in a moment of life and death, our superconscious or subconscious, or however you define these things, are going to take automatic control, just like in a car wreck or something like that. it's so fast that you don't have the ability to think, but you just naturally respond and react. I believe that's our soul self coming through. That's our higher self coming through, however you want to look at it. And yeah, exactly, Mark. That's the thing, is to listen, observe, and then react, which takes time. And so when we're in a heightened emotional state, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, those processes can get a little junked up. And when we sit in that stuff for a little bit, and move into the resistance and feel it, it's been my experience that you push through to the other side, and then it goes. It doesn't have. It's like you drain the pool. Hey, Larkin. Hey, Larkin's here.
Hey, sorry, I've been trying to get in from my phone because, of course, I'm not on yet like I was going to be. But great conversation, Chris.
Thanks.
Wow, I love your story about climbing. That's pretty awesome.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that, a lot of people, I find that, like, men seem to refer to that more as, like, a gut feeling.
Right.
Not you, because you've been working with people so long, but women tend to use the term intuition. I think that they're different and they're the same. Gut feeling is like the physical sensation that you get from your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really awesome. I think that that's something that I think you and I in the coaching program we're putting together in the Awakening Your Intuition program too, that we really work on is, when you can connect to that inner voice, it's very different than just tapping into our general intellect.
Right.
It's so much more than that. And it is I think I'm glad you wanted to talk about this today, because it's really it's a different type of intelligence is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many different forms of intelligence that we don't recognize. And our emotions, our cognition, basically because of our egoic mind, have taken over so much in our world that we don't really recognize these other forms of intelligence that ourselves and other life have.
Right.
And I think that this topic that you brought up today really shares a lot of that. It opens a lot of doors and opportunities and introductions for people to go out and really explore these various forms of intelligence. Don't get caught up in, I believe in guides, I don't believe in guides, it was my angels, it was my loved one. Honestly, spirit doesn't care who you think it is. As long as you get the message, it doesn't matter, because you're part of the greater intelligence, right? And,
right.
and the greater intelligence is all that matters, and you're part of that.
Right.
And so in readings, people always want to know, well, what did Uncle so-and-so say? What about Grandma such and such? And the thing is your spirit guides will have the same messages, because and so would your angels, and so does your higher self, because you're all tapped into that greater intelligence that's beyond space and time. So we don't need to get caught up in the details, but just know that you have and are connected to these greater forms of intelligence. And that has a lot to do with what we're talking about today.
Right. Like, to me, like, those are all gatekeepers, right? And it helps us when we don't believe in our connection. It kind of helps us to think that there's someone else helping us with this information. But it is a challenge to discern. And when, and Mark, totally understand you got to go. Thanks for tuning in. I mean, he's going through cancer treatment right now, and I'm just so blessed to have him as a friend and as a supporter in my life and in the show. Thanks for tuning in, Mark.
Thinking about you, Mark.
And totally understand. Don't beat yourself. The challenge is not to beat ourselves up for learning these processes. It's, if we could remember what it was like to learn to walk, hopefully most of us were encouraged and not like, you don't walk like that. You're waddling, you're not steady. I mean, I've never heard that. Have you, Larkin? When a kid's learning to
No,
walk, their
I
parents.
have actually, yeah. I mean, I've seen people get impatient with their kids because a lot of them don't realize. This is interjecting something else, but my parents are teachers, so I'm big into child development, and a lot of parents don't actually realize that you have to go through a phase of crawling, and if you don't crawl for a certain amount of time, there's actually brain development issues that you have, and other things. So it really does damage to like your mathematic and analytical abilities. You really need to crawl, and so I have seen people really jump right to wanting their kid to walk, or their kid stood up while they were starting to crawl for a moment, and they kind of forced them to skip the crawling,
Okay.
and got frustrated with them. I have actually, sadly, I have seen that. But you'd think in most cases you would hope that people would be encouraging.
Right. um, you know, I think sometimes we can, be a little disencouraging. Like, don't, oh man, I hope they don't start walking soon because we have to keep up with them. But you know, that's just I guess another perspective. But being able to understand and cultivate within yourself that compassion and grace, because the compassion is going to help connect you to your true self, which is going to help to your empowerment. When you go through and you start observing the negative self-talk and all the different things, when you can respond to that in a different way, it is transformational. I've shared on this, about my suicide challenges and getting, going to the other side at 17, and then having a couple really deep egoic deaths that led me close to that train of thought again. And every time that I've gone to that thought or gone to that place, that what people would call darkness within, was I can't die. But what part of me is limiting me from truly living? What are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What are the behaviors? What are the relationships? What are the things that I'm doing on a regular basis that's keeping me from being the highest expression of my true self? Not my story of who I think I am, or who I tell people I am, or how I market myself as, or how I identify by the way I dress as, but who I truly am, bare naked and pure being, pure just presence of where I am in that moment. And I've wanted to live in that vibration for the last 15 years. To just fully embody and embrace like the best version of myself, while accepting and loving that I am human, that I am going to miss my marks, that I'm not a level of obtainable perfection. Because once you've reached that level of perfection, it's a dangerous place, because then where are you supposed to go? Like, if you're as spiritual as you can be, you're as rich as you can be, you're as you could be, what would your life? What would be the purpose for your existence anymore? And that's why I think perfectionism is kind of funny. Because then what would you strive for? What would your purpose be?
Well, and I think that's a human egoic perspective, though, too.
Sure.
We ask that question, but I think if we also look back and say, okay, but the whole concept of being perfect is an egoic one.
Right.
And so when we get to a certain level of awakening, the isness is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, but in a different way, because that term is, again, it's an egoic word, it's an egoic concept. And you know, I think that our mind wants things to be complicated because it makes it feel like it's something bigger and more important to conquer. We want there to be lots of facets. We say that we don't, but we do. We want there to be lots of facets to fix so that we feel significant and important and that we've got a lot to do and a lot to look forward to. We want to be able to measure things. We want to have limitless options. All of those things are to entertain our egoic self.
Right.
In truth, you know, and this is why, you know, I often find that, you know, I will start working with people and they get bored, because just like they get bored when they first start reading Eckhart Tolle's work or listening to Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, because everything that we talk about, everything that you can possibly have a challenge with, an issue with, a problem with, you need to fix, that you don't like about yourself, every single one of those things is made up. And it's made up by what you were talking about, Chris, your egoic story.
Mm-hmm.
And when the solution is actually very simple. It's not easy, but it's simple, and nobody wants to do it because it's not interesting enough and exciting enough for the ego. It's really just about becoming aware of your thoughts, determining the difference between your thoughts and your intuition, learning self-control, learning to be quiet, getting away from the brainwashing. All those things that seem really boring are the things that liberate you. Mm. And this is why so few people do it, because we are convinced that it's much more fun to go get 1,000 readings, to go buy crystals, to try a new potion, to smoke a new version of something, to go to our therapist and tell about our drama and get drugs, to tell people we have to work out 8 hours a day to keep our anxiety down, you know, to move away and create a whole new life. There are limitless ways in which the egoic self pretends to fix itself and to make the changes that it wants. And it gives you a temporary sense of relief and gratification. And then if you really sit back, though, if you think about it after this podcast, you'll find that your life is just full of those cycles. And maybe those cycles seem to be improving, but you'll find that it's habits and repetition. And the content may seem very different to you, but the context will be the same. And as the decades go by, you're like, wait a minute, I'm still after the same thing. So I throw this out here on the second half of the show to remind those of you that are really ready that chances are, if you are saying, wow, this is really working, I'm excited, this feels great, you're probably distracted. If you're saying, well, this is making things a lot easier, or I'm not I can't tell you how many people I've said, well, you know, I don't really think this coaching program is the right match for me, because I think I'm supposed to go the way of astrology, or I'm supposed to go the way of Reiki, both of which healing techniques and I'm an astrologer. I do healing techniques. There's nothing wrong with those things.
Right.
But don't confuse these practices with conscious awakening.
Well, it wakes you to the new other possibilities.
Practices with your answer.
Yeah.
It's our ego that is always looking to fix something or looking for the solution. And as long as you believe that that's happening, and you're constantly saying, oh, it's not this, I found something better, oh, now it's that, then chances are you are distracted and you're not really in alignment with the outcome you want. However, if it's messy and it's dirty and you're full of challenges and it's painful and you're using that as an opportunity and you're having to apply self-control and create new habits, and it's a lot of hard work, then chances are you're on the right track.
Right.
Just
Go
a
towards
little
the
pro out there
resistance, not the path
for
of
those
least
of you that are.
resistance. Yeah. Yeah.
It is, well, actually, you want the path of least resistance, but
Right.
that doesn't mean that's a whole different topic, what's easy and what's not. But I think, Chris, you nailed it right there. Is our only problem is our resistance. Period.
Right.
It's not what's happening to us. It's not our relationships. It's not our health. It's not our money. It's not any of that. It is our resistance to all of the things that we don't like. And the irony is, when you let go of the resistance, the circumstances change. Because, and here's the key point of the whole show today, it is only when we accept the moment, the now, exactly as it is. That doesn't mean you have to like it. And it doesn't mean that you're saying it's going to be that way forever, which is what the ego says. The ego says, if I'm accepting this, that means I'm accepting it forever and it's never going to change. Because the ego says you have to fight for everything you want to change. But in truth, it's not that at all. It is that when we step into acceptance, then the illusion disappears. What you resist will persist. My dear colleague, Dr. Ed Maloney, used to say that all the time. That's where I learned that phrase. What you resist will persist. So as soon as you slip out of resistance and into acceptance, which is a whole nother topic. I spent a whole year just studying resistance, and there is no end to it. You really have to learn how to get over that. But when we learn to do that, what happens is change and transformation come a lot faster. And it's true inner authentic change and transformation. And when we stop resisting a situation, it tends to go away. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about it. I want to say this and then I'll shut up. How many times have you found yourself thinking or saying or believing, well, that's just too good to be true. This has been wonderful. I know it won't last. And the things that you love that seem great, like a relationship or a job or a vacation or a car or something wonderful, you find that it really doesn't last very long. But the things that you really hate and you can't stand and you're desperate to transform out of, you don't seem to be able to shake it.
Right.
And that's because you have no resistance to the things that you're liking and you're wanting. And therefore, they tend to flee and change more quickly. Whereas the things that you have resistance to, it actually holds them in place. So just some food for thought there.
That was a great way of putting it. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and you know, the biggest challenge, right, in my healing journey as I've been on this thing, for me has been like, oh, I thought I worked on that. You know, I did a class around my childhood trauma and I felt better. And I'm still being triggered. What's up? Why didn't that program complete it? And for me, it's been my experience that a lot of the programs that we create are trying to just make you feel good, like instant transformation, which is like, it's like a drug or an alcohol or anything, any coping mechanism. It gives temporary relief, so we want to keep going into it. But eventually, we're not getting the same out of it because, like Larkin was just saying, the resistance tends to not be there for a little while because we're putting our attention on that it's fixed. And then when something else challenges us, we take our attention off of it and it hasn't been fully processed yet. So it's going to come back up. Jojo says, 2 of our children skip crawling. They did this to themselves. We encouraged crawling. Where does your theory stand there when they do it themselves? We can't say, no, don't walk. You need to crawl first. That's a great point. Um, eh, Larkin, do you want to? I'm not an expert on this. I'm more like, well, that was what they needed to do, and that was what they came in with their programming. So, nothing wrong. But your perspective on that?
I'm sorry, my perspective on what?
Jojo said she's got 2 children that skip crawling completely. They did it themselves naturally. They encourage crawling. So she's wondering, where does the theory stand when they do it for themselves?
Oh dear. Okay. Well, it's still a problem. And how old are they now? What I would say is what typically what they do, and I don't know where to tell you to find a specialist for this, honestly, because there's a lot of developmental things that are left out of the loop right now. There's a lot of things, unfortunately, that no offense to any doctors out there, but there's a lot of things developmentally that it just depends on the doctor you get and what they know, what they're aware of. It's one thing if you have like a learning or developmental specialist, and so you might want to seek someone in that field out to find out. In my past experience and from my education and child development education in psychology and education, is that um, the thing to do is to go back and have them crawl now. And there are actually many examples of children whose parents have made them do that more than just crawling, actually. They did a lot of other developmental things to create those neural pathways in their brain and in their small and large motor skills. Um, it's not quite the same if you do it after their brain is developed to a certain point. However, usually the thing that is recommended, um, at least that I have heard from specialists and that I have seen work, is that you go back and you have the children actually crawl. Um, I don't know how much you would need to look that up, but you spend a few months going back and actually each day spending a certain amount of time making them crawl. So it may be that if they're young children, you could maybe do a game where you put up like a water, one of those straight water slides outside, and you put water on it, and maybe you have them so it doesn't hurt their knees. Maybe you have them do races up and down the yard on the wet water slide, or you put down gym mats in your basement and you have them do something like, do some sort of races or something like that. Um, so it will help if you do that. But usually what happens is if they do it on their own, it usually already means there's some developmental gap there, because most children, if they're developing naturally, they actually want to crawl. And then when their brain and motor skills are done developing the way it needs to for crawling, then they naturally choose to walk. So chances are there were already some gaps there, and they might not be old enough for you to see that. But I'll try to look it up. I can probably pop a couple good books in the chat here for you later. And I can get the name of some books, and then you would need to look and see if you find as your kids are going through school that they're having some issues in school. You might want to then seek out like a learning specialist or a developmental specialist and see if they can give you any further advice, because I'm not a specialist in that. I've just dealt with it a lot. So, but I'll see what I can pop in the chat for you. Okay, that's a great question.
Wow, learned something new today. Thank you.
Yeah. It's always worth mentioning. That's why I mention it.
Right.
I
absolutely.
mean, I'm ADHD, and I didn't even know that till I was in my 40s. And even then, I blew it off because I was fine. I don't have the symptoms that a guy has. I'm not distracted. I get focused. But I'll tell you what, it answers all of my problems. It answers why I'm up late. It answers why I'm always late. It answers why things take me 10 times as long. it answers why I take on too many projects. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we don't realize until we're older that go undiagnosed. And so I think it's great that you're asking about this now, Jojo, because the earlier you can, help and catch these things, if anything is to come of this, the better off they'll be. Yeah.
And then I would challenge you, just as your friend, you show those symptoms, so those are things that you can work on, right? Because it's not definitive. We're all energy, and we transform ourselves every 7 years. We can reprogram ourselves. We can grow, change our DNA. We can do all this stuff too. So we're not victims of these things. They're just awarenesses of things that we have the opportunity to grow through.
And that's true, but I'm also going to jump in and be devil's advocate there too, because yes, those things are possible. Yes, that is true, but we need to not rely on that right now, because the truth of the matter is that most of us are so busy, caught up and distracted in our lives that we don't actually do the things we could do within a 7-year period.
We lost you.
Don't get
Sorry, Larkin, we just lost you for like 2 minutes.
Or believing in that. Don't get caught up in hoping or believing in that it will be.
Right, it's not hard science. But science itself isn't hard. I mean, true science is always supposed to be questioned, because it's always expanding. But I guess we lost Larkin. So we'll go ahead and wrap up today's show. Thanks for all the questions and comments and people chiming in. It really makes the show a little smoother for us, and keeps us on point. So thank you for your participation. Thanks all those who tuned in live and all those who are going to watch on the replay. We love you very much and appreciate you. Again, if you haven't subscribed to our channels on Facebook, YouTube, it's the Enhance Your World show. And I will not be here next Tuesday, the 12th, but we'll catch you on the following week.
Hey, Chris, are you there?
Oh, there you are. You're back.
Yeah, I'm here. I've been here. I'll be on the show next week.
Okay, perfect.
I'll be doing the show.
Awesome.
I just wanted to throw this out, though. I did want to say this, though, because this is very important. I know you're trying to close up, but I'm sorry. But
no, it's okay.
Those of us that are intuitive and spiritual and aware of all this energy stuff, we have to be careful that we don't not use science because we believe in this stuff. Mm-hmm. Because the truth of the matter is that until we make it more of a practice, until it's more of our Western society lifestyle to focus enough for 7 years to make sure our next 7 years is different. And that doesn't exclude developmental stuff. If it's child development, it does not exclude that. So just make sure that you guys have a balance of the science. We need science, guys. We need science. Those of us that are spiritual and metaphysical, you can't just ditch the science because you're 99.9% space. If you do that, you're going to end up with issues. Use the other stuff for creating, for preventative, for experimenting, for building up your ability to manifest. But you do have to deal with the physical human aspect of who and what you are for the time that you're here in physical form. And I think it's very easy for us to get talking and forget about that. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. But yes, I will be here next week. Chris, this was an awesome show. I'll let you finish closing up. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Thank you for adding that, because that's absolutely, totally 100% agree. And hi, Tammy, and thanks so much. Appreciate you. So yeah, check us out next week. Larkin will be on. And I'll join her again the following week. And until then, much love and gratitude. Thanks for all that you are, all that you do, and all that you choose to be, because this world would not be the same without you and us. So thanks so much. Have a great one. Bye-bye.